as angry and vicious out there at the moment. If you can't tell, it has started raining. Trouble was, in the last 20 minutes there's been 8 lightning strikes in the surrounding 3 towns. You can hear the copter out there. There's 2 water bombers out there. Just trying to hit that space there. We've been put onto a watch and act alert, so I'm watching. I had a feeling this was going to happen. This could be part of that southerly change coming through. But there's also an awful lot of really high, thick cloud being generated by this fire the way it was earlier today. It's good because we haven't been able to really smell the smoke at the house. Can definitely smell it here. That rain's starting to get heavy. I'm going to go back up to the car. This is incredibly welcome. I don't know what sort of an impact it's going to have on that, but hopefully this is nice. This is nice and heavy, rather than we had a little spit earlier and it was like bump bump bump, stopped. But this is super welcome. If that can help get on top of that, the Erskine Creek bit, that bit that's all down in there. The thunder's alright as long as there's no lightning attached. That's the only trouble. That helicopter's coming back over, so he's probably just gone over to Woodford Lake and come back. And they've been water bombing this area, and they've been water bombing the fire trail area over the other out behind us. Yeah. I'm getting soaked and I really don't mind, because it means that this could be a really good help for this fire, as long as it stays heavy for long enough. I'm going to head back to the house. I've gone about 500 metres up the street and the rain stopped. Still could be falling down over that area, but most of that area just looked like smoke. I think the feeling of the rain was so welcoming. I just didn't care if I was getting wet. All the other people who were down there, as soon as it started to rain, they went back to the house. It was only like 2-3 doors up from the lookout. Got the windows sort of sealed up from the smoke and stuff. And hopefully I've got them all now and it's all good. Monday morning, that rain yesterday seems to have really set in. I'm hoping that it settles in even more. The forecast is for a cloudy day, but it'd be nice if it rains with it. I just had a look at the hotspots site, and there's no new detected satellite hotspots in the last 6 hours. So the hotspots that it's showing there from between 6 to 24 hours, so that was yesterday's stuff. They are only a couple of K from the house, if that. The local forecast was for rain from Wednesday on for the rest of the week. Now, while that might affect our swimming carnival on Friday, I really don't care if it's going to help dampen out the bush and stuff. I know that it might hinder some of the backburning operations that they were doing yesterday, but I'll have to check their site and see if they've updated the fires near me to show where their burn has actually gone, because it doesn't get updated very quickly. But they should have it updated from yesterday at least, so I'll have a look at that. Into work, because of thoughts before the rain came in yesterday, we got some of the go bags back into the cars. A lot of them were still in the cars, but some of the stuff we'd brought back in because it had things that we wanted to get to, and some of that went back out, so that if my wife needs to try and take off the car, her car is ready for her and the dogs to get out. And I've got some clothes and stuff in the back of this car and my important documents type thing. We'll see how the day at work goes. Got year 9 twice. First one's a theory lesson, some prac in the afternoon based on how they go. And I've got year 12, which I need to talk with year 12 about that after school class, and we negotiate another time. And I've really got to impress upon them the importance that they come to that afternoon or morning class, because it's going to be that 1 out of 7 periods. If I'd left it at the Friday, I might have had missing 2 out of 7s quite often. And 2 of the kids who did come last Friday were ones who do have jobs, so I don't want to go saying to them, choose your job or school, because we all need to make a living, and having them have a job now is a good start for them, having a part-time job while they're at school. Builds character, builds responsibility, and those 2 are quite responsible students, so it's one thing that I really want to work with them on. At the end of Monday, I had year 9 twice today and my year 12 construction class. Year 12 decided to opt for a morning class as opposed to that Friday afternoon class. So that'll be a 7:30 start class every second Thursday, which is going to be tough for me trying to get... I usually leave home around 7:30, so I'm going to have to leave a lot earlier. Year 9, I had a theory lesson this morning, then we came down here for prac, and it was the very first time we came into the prac room. So we're looking at doing this small nail box, mainly because it has a lot of skills in it. It used to be the project that I did second with the class, but new syllabus, new courses, that sort of stuff. So we start out with the job sheet so they can see a little bit of how to read them. It's a bit faint in the camera. And their one doesn't have the spreadsheet up the top filled in. It's more like... it looks more like this. So it's got the diagram with all the measurements on it and a half or partially filled in box. So with discussion and holding up that one, talking about grain direction and thicknesses of timber and that sort of stuff. We get that mark filled in, jumped into the storeroom, grabbed out what's scrap timber and reclaimed timber I could find, so they get their handles cut out of this. While they were doing that, I prepared some stuff for the ends, and then just at the end of the lesson I was preparing stuff for the sides. Obviously I need to prepare a lot more of that, but it was the last period of the day and I had to go to the exec meeting, so I've done that. And because it was last period and then I ran off to the exec meeting, I thought I'd better come back over here and lock up. Basically that's been the day. 2 classes. I think it was probably a good idea. I was trying to move my rooming around because the computer room that we had this morning didn't have enough computers for the whole class, because it's a large class. But this last period was the one where I could find a bigger computer room, but I don't want to throw them in a computer room last period of the day because it'll be really hard to keep them focused. Putting them in here and going through that cutting list discussion and then getting them into prac did work really well, and the kids worked really well. Come pack up time, first lesson, place did get packed up, but some kids sort of gave up on it, so that'll be a discussion point in the next lesson. But they were safe, they were cooperative, they were working really well, so that was great for a last period on the day. The next time I've got them is Wednesday, period 2 and 3. So before recess, after recess, that'll be the new thing for them, where we get to the end of the period and I say everything can stay out because we're straight back in here after recess. And we'll see how that goes. I might just quickly rip up some more timber for the sides, because if I don't, then the saw will have to be reset. Now that's currently set exactly how I had it from the previous pieces, so I might quickly get some stuff cut up before I take off and pack up in the staff room and go.
Find it. Never found it. Never found it. I think they hosed me so bad on that deal. Either that or one day that they'll, 5 years from now, be like, oh, hey, there's your vice.
Yeah. Well, with social media, someone's going to see it somewhere.
This has been 2 years ago.
Oh, man. So how does it could have fell off the trailer, and then someone like us three immediately was like, oh my God, I have to get that. I don't care.
Yeah, but how many?
Stop at the lookout to see what was happening with this. The smoke didn't look intense coming up, but there was still smoke there, so I thought I'd just stop here. The area that you can sort of see the smoke in here, that's where they were trying to join up the two, the fire break that was over here and the fire break that was back this way. They're just trying to join up the two. That's where all the smoke is. I just saw one helicopter fly up from there and head off to get a bucket. I can hear one over this way now. You might be able to. And wind is kind of blowing in my face now, coming from the north, a little bit northwest. Not as bad as it looked on the weekend, but still got to keep an eye on it. Just coming to have a check before going into work. Seems to be mostly there. I think there's some down the Woodford Fire Trail, which is that way. We've had the scanner going through the night. I've heard a few things this morning about them sort of doing clean up on their way in and out. And it's a nice cool day. I'm hoping it stays that way, and we've actually got rain forecast for the rest of the week from tomorrow, I think, up until the weekend. So Tuesday afternoon, just finished with my Year 11s, their first prac lesson for the term, and their first project is basically, I've still got to give it to them, but designing and making something for their own space, and so that they can actually design with confidence because they know what sort of joints they're going to do. We will build a whole stack of basic joints as research, basically. And to start with, basically a couple of widening joints. So they do one widening joint as though you're doing a tabletop, one biscuit joint as though you might be doing legs, and the only constraint I gave for them in getting their timber ready was all three pieces had to be the same length, in between 150 and 220 mil. So that gives them a bit of practice in deciding on a size, marking it and making each one the same size. Couldn't get them under the disc sander yet because the disc on that one is completely smooth, and I can't find my Allen keys to change it over. They're down in the construction space, so I'll have to grab them in the morning, change that over, because I've got Year 9 in here tomorrow for a double, and they'll want to use it. But that was pretty good for an afternoon class. It's after regular school, so from 3 till 4. It's now 5 to 4. I've just dismissed them and they've gone. And yeah, they were good. The whole class showed up. It was really, a number of them were asking me to cancel the class, and I said, no, we're not cancelling, we're going ahead with it, because I had them this morning. I had them period 4 for a lesson, and then this one after school. But they all showed up. The majority of them had a good crack at it, and they all got their boots on, their aprons on, they're all eager to learn, they're all asking questions, so only a couple of lessons in and it looks like it's going to be promising. So Year 9 ended up getting all of their pieces together apart from the base for their little nail box, parts box. I also demonstrated to them how to mark out for housings and rebates and how to start cutting out the rebate joint, and basically marking out depending on your material, so using the thickness of the timber to mark out those. We use the width of the handle to mark out the ends, so they're not having to use the ruler for everything and realising you don't have to use the ruler for everything. Year 11 got their first go at the biscuit joiner today, ended up putting together just a straight widening joint and a corner joint, and they started getting their timber together because we're going to be doing a hand cut mortise and tenon and dowel joints. This is all part of their joint research, their first project, because the general idea is that if they know what joints there are available and what they can do with those joints, then their research and their project design can be a little bit more successful because they can design it with the joints in mind. Most of the time they end up opting for dominoes and biscuits because they're a lot quicker. That's why when we're doing our practice joints, we've got the list here of all the joints we're going to do. The domino is last, or second last, because the butt joint is there just so they can see how strong glue can be. But the domino is going to be the last one because they'll realise how simple it is to actually do and how foolproof it can be. There are always exceptions. We had the swimming carnival today. Guess what colour my house is? Got a little washed out, fairly heavy rain, and it got to the point where it was like the day's going to end. The kids were being dismissed. It was like mid-afternoon, but because it was too early for the end of the day, the boss said all staff had to go back to school. But it's Friday Arvo, and that swimming carnival was a nice way to spend a Friday. In case you haven't noticed, I have a new surrounding. So this is the vehicle to replace Max and the Suzuki. Dual cab ute I was looking at. Picked it up last night, and so far it's basically driven me back to the house from the car yard, down to work, and now back to the house. And pretty happy with it. A lot more comfortable than old Max. Being that it's a ute with leaf springs in the back, even though it is the top luxury model, and this wasn't bought brand new. It's a 2018 used car. It's not quite as smooth as I felt the Suzuki was, even though the Suzuki was set up fairly stiff. Leaf springs in the back, it will bounce a little bit, but it does handle most things a lot more comfortable than I've noticed so far. I missed giving you an update on Thursday. Thursday, I had to get a lift into work so that my wife could pick me up after work so we could go and pick up this. It was the day I was supposed to have my zero class with year 12. Pleasingly, around about 2/3 of the class showed up for a 7:30 class. Classes for the rest of the day kind of got construction. We had to do a lot of enrolment and signing up for work placement and the literacy minimum standard stuff that they've got to do. And then they had a whole year meeting when I was supposed to have the kids for timber. Technically seen the construction class 3 times. I haven't had them in a workshop yet. I still need to give them cluster A. So that'll be next week now, even though I've already had them all printed with the fact that they were supposed to be given them on Tuesday. But they do have until June to complete it all. We've had some heavy rain come through. We're meant to get heavy rain all weekend, which is perfect for putting out the fires. Apparently the really big fire over to the north of the mountains has been declared out, to the point where my wife was looking on the Fires Near Me app last night, and she said the burnt out area that they normally have outlined for this is where the fire is has been removed. So unless that was just a glitch last night, that's supposed to be the thing of it's all out. So it's now the southern side of the mountains, which is where we are, and hopefully this rain is basically going to take care of the fire that's in behind us. And if they've had rain up at the house as heavily as we had down near school, we could be lucky. We're forecast to get in between 100 and 150 mil over the weekend, so between 4 and 6 inches. So fingers crossed that we actually do get that, and that will take care of all the fires, especially the ones down the south coast, which have been really devastating. My wife asked me last night how this drove home, coming up the mountain. That part I just came up then was probably one section where I wondered how it would go. It's got a 2.8 litre diesel, a turbo diesel, and it's been tuned so that it's not up to spec with most of the similar vehicles in the class. Like, it's got a lower power, it's only got like 110 kilowatt, about 350 or 360 newtons. So for anybody who's into cars will know what that means. My Suzuki with the 2.5 V6 petrol, it had 116 kilowatts, so just a bit more in the power development, but it only had 213 newtons of torque. So I just know that coming up that hill in the Suzuki, you would have to be a bit heavy on the accelerator to make it stay at 90 all the way up that hill. And I've just noticed that this cruises up the mountain almost effortlessly, and it's probably because most of the torque in diesel engines is developed really low. 1400 revs maybe is where the torque band kicks in for maximum, and it hangs onto it. So it cruised up the hill. I had to take one of my PA amps today because I do the announcer, and I can't really very well chuck it in the back of your ute, and you don't want to go throwing it on the back seats. These back seats actually fold up, so the amp is able to sit on the floor really easily. So I've got everything sort of thrown into the back here without fear of damaging the seats. Still trying to figure out what we're going to do with Max because of his load carrying capacity, because it would be good to still have the van for picking up materials for doing the house renovations. So we probably still, and I've talked about this at another point, but it's not in one of these shop updates. We may still get the mechanics have a look over the van and just pay them for some labour to have them professionally look over it and give us an honest professional opinion about whether the van would be worth trying to do some work on it and what it would cost. I don't think it's worth doing it with the Suzuki because the benefit's just not there really. I don't know. I've just been down to Penrith, almost back at the house. But you can see it's raining really heavy now, and they're now talking about the rain that's coming through on the east coast of Australia as being really severe. Some areas have already received 6 inches of rain. There's been a lot here where there's lots of little sections across the highway which are flooding. Not as in river flooding, but so much water that it's creating very deep patches across the highway. But they're even suggesting that northern New South Wales, right on the coast, they could expect a full foot, like 300 mil of rain over this weekend. It's been constant here. At some points it's kind of like a drizzle. At other points right now it's quite heavy. I'm really hoping that it puts out the fires completely, and that's what I think the weather forecasters are hoping as well, and really soaks into the ground. As my wife said to me last night, I've never really wanted rain, but having all of this rain right now is relieving a lot of stress that we've basically been feeling about the fires, especially this one from last weekend or whatever, being so much closer. I'm certainly seeing where all of the water is flowing all over our block and down past the side of the block and flooding past the sheds, and the sandstone ponds out the front are absolutely overflowing, and it's creating a stream down past the house. I'll actually I'll get down under the house in the laundry area and see if there's any water running through that space, because the rain has been so heavy. If it soaks down through the ground, that's going to be a cause for that. I didn't see anything last night, and we had heavy rain already. Let's see.